Welcome to the deep dive. So you wanted to get up to speed quickly and thoroughly on how to connect with and influence people more effectively.
That's right.
Well, we're jumping straight into this really fascinating world of advanced communication and influence. We've pulled together, I think, a really interesting set of ideas for you.
Yeah, definitely. We've looked at various approaches to communication, the psychology behind what makes people listen, and, well, even some of the more strategic, let's call them maneuvers people use to persuade.
Right. And our goal really is to equip you with some concrete ways to enhance your social interactions, build stronger connections.
And also, importantly, to highlight some of those less obvious tactics people might use so you can become more aware of those dynamics yourself.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I mean, at its core, becoming a better communicator, becoming more influential, it isn't just about the words you pick, is it?
No, not at all. It's really about fundamentally shifting how you're perceived and, well, how you actually connect with others. And one sort of foundational idea we saw is this concept of you communication.
You communication, okay.
Yeah, the core idea is simple. To really get someone's attention and respect and, ultimately their ear, you need to make them feel seen, valued, mentioning them positively.
And why does that work so well?
Well, it's the psychology, isn't it? People are basically wired to be most interested in themselves. Any information that relates directly to them gets processed more deeply. It's just far more memorable.
That makes total sense. It's like our own little internal radar is always pinging for anything involving me.
Exactly.
And speaking of keeping people engaged, there was another technique that came up. It sounds almost too simple, but apparently really effective. The parroting technique.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
You just repeat the last, say, 3 words someone says.
But not just repeat them flatly, right?
No, crucially, you do it with an interested expression. What's interesting is how such a small thing signals, I'm listening. And it just encourages the speaker to keep going, to elaborate.
Keeps the flow going naturally. They feel heard.
Precisely. And that expression shows you're genuinely engaged, not just, mimicking like a robot.
Okay, now what about that classic question? So what do you do? Just saying your job title, it can kind of fall flat, can it?
Oh, definitely. The suggestion we found is to make it much more engaging by telling a quick, relevant story about your profession.
Like the example, the lawyer who told a story about a case. Something about tricky interview questions.
Yeah, exactly that one. And connecting this to the bigger picture, a good story makes your work relatable, memorable. It's not just a label anymore.
It gives a glimpse into the why or the how of what you do, makes it interesting.
Much more interesting, yeah.
And for handling social events, parties, that kind of thing, the advice seems to be have a few current news topics ready to go.
Right. Things like major world events, shifts in the stock market, maybe some new legislation people are talking about.
Why is that helpful?
Well, having those ready lets you connect more easily with different sorts of people. You can find common ground for conversation pretty quickly. Plus, it shows you're, aware of the world around you.
Okay. Now, switching gears a bit. What if you're the one getting asked the same question over and over, and maybe you'd rather not get drawn into a long discussion?
Ah, yes. There's a technique called the broken record.
The broken record? Yeah. How does that work?
The key is consistency. You calmly and consistently repeat the exact same answer, same tone, same wording, every time.
Like the example, yes, the tuition is the same, and we are still concentrating on our studies right now.
Exactly. The power is in that sort of non-escalatory persistence. You just calmly repeat your point, and it helps you disengage from those, unproductive loops without getting confrontational.
Useful. Another one for strengthening bonds, gratitude. But not just any thank you.
Right. The sources really emphasize making it specific. Add the reasons why you're grateful.
Why does the specificity matter so much?
Well, when you explain why, it shows you actually noticed. You genuinely valued what the other person did. That specificity makes the thanks feel real, much more authentic, and it deepens the connection.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
And the last one in this sort of communication toolkit was mirroring vocabulary and tone.
Yes, subtly adapting your language, your way of speaking, to match the person you're talking to. It can create this feeling of closeness.
Like the example saying profession, if they say profession instead of just job.
Precisely. It taps into that subconscious thing where we tend to like people who seem similar to us. So mirroring their style, it builds rapport almost without them noticing and makes the interaction feel more impactful.
Okay, so just to recap those 7 communication techniques quickly. Praising others with you communication, storytelling about your work, staying updated on news, using the broken record technique, expressing specific gratitude, mirroring language and tone, and that parroting technique to keep conversation flowing.
A good toolkit.
Definitely. Now let's move into something, well, maybe even more compelling. Powerful mental triggers. These psychological principles that, really influence our decisions, how we see things.
Absolutely. And the material used that great analogy, didn't it? The mother turkey, whose instinct is just automatically triggered by the cheep, cheep sound.
Right. That specific sound flips a switch.
It's an ingrained response. And understanding these kinds of triggers in humans, well, it's very insightful.
Yeah. 2 really big ones are reciprocity and consistency. Reciprocity being that urge to give back when someone gives us something.
That feeling of obligation.
Yeah. And consistency is our desire to act in line with things we've already done or said, even small things.
And it's interesting, the evolutionary angle. Reciprocity, cooperation, social exchange, vital for survival.
Yeah.
And consistency, well, we like our actions to match our self-image, our past behavior. It feels right.
So how does this play out practically, like with consistency?
Well, what's useful to grasp is how getting someone to agree to something small first, it significantly increases the chance they'll agree to something bigger later. They want to stay consistent with that initial yes.
Okay, got it. Another big one, social proof. This is where we look at what other people are doing to figure out what we should do.
Yeah, like choosing a restaurant. You see a packed one next to an empty one.
You assume the busy one must be better, right? Just because everyone else is there.
Exactly. It taps into this idea that others might know something we don't, but also, frankly, our desire to just fit in. Normative influence, they call it.
People are really influenced by popularity, by reviews. If lots of people like it, it must be good.
It's a powerful shortcut for decision-making.
Then there's liking. Pretty straightforward, maybe. We're more influenced by people we actually like.
Seems obvious, but the sources pointed out how to foster that liking, finding common ground, offering genuine compliments.
That connection, shared interests, shared values, it makes people more open to you. But the compliments have to be real, right?
Oh, absolutely. Insincerity usually backfires.
Okay. Authority, another trigger. Even just dressing the part can make a difference.
Definitely. Professional attire, for instance, can signal competence, expertise, even if you haven't said a word. People tend to defer to perceived authority.
And finally, scarcity. Making something seem limited or hard to get actually increases desire.
Yes, like delaying responses can make you seem more in demand. And classic examples, diamonds, their perceived scarcity drives value. Or the Concorde flights back in the day.
British Airways limiting the supply.
Exactly. It taps into our fear of missing out, loss aversion. If it's scarce, it must be valuable, and we don't want to lose the chance to get it.
Okay, so we have these powerful triggers, but
Yeah.
we also need to acknowledge that influence isn't always straightforward or totally transparent.
No, and this is where the material we looked at gets into more, let's say, strategic maneuvering, cleverness even.
Right, which leads to some, more complex tactics. One was selective honesty.
Ah, yes. The story they used was fascinating. Victor and Al Capone.
Capone's investment, the $50,000.
Right. Victor seemingly lost it, but they showed Capone this paper with zeros on it, somehow convinced him it wasn't all gone, and even walked away with $5,000 extra.
So how does that illustrate selective honesty?
Well, the idea is by appearing truthful or maybe even vulnerable in one aspect, perhaps a minor one, you can disarm someone, build a false sense of trust that you can then exploit somewhere else, somewhere more significant.
So you present as honest in area A to build trust, then deceive in area B.
Basically, yes. You establish credibility selectively to mask where you lack it.
Okay. Another tactic discussed was unpredictability.
Yeah, using Bobby Fischer as the example. His behavior before and during the 72 chess match against Baskin.
Very erratic, right? Making strange demands, not showing up.
Exactly. And the suggestion is that this wasn't just random. It was potentially a strategy to unsettle Spassky psychologically, keep him off balance. And, Spassky did eventually resign unexpectedly.
So being unpredictable can be a deliberate way to gain a psychological edge.
It seems it can. Then there's creating dependency.
Like the Bismarck and King William example.
Precisely. Bismarck made himself indispensable to the king, providing crucial support, sometimes even when the king was reluctant. And ultimately, that dependency gave Bismarck immense power.
So you strategically provide support or resources until the other person relies on you.
Which in turn increases your influence over them.
Okay. And appealing to self-interest. That seems fundamental.
It really is. The example was Corsair Island wanting Athens' help.
Right. They didn't just rely on past favors, did they?
No, they emphasized their strong navy and how Athens would benefit in the future fight against Sparta by having them as allies.
So future practical benefits often trump appeals to history or gratitude.
Absolutely. People are far more likely to act when they see a clear, what's in it for me.
Makes sense. And finally, a really ethically tricky one, taking credit for others' work.
Yeah, the Tesla-Edison situation was mentioned. While obviously questionable, claiming others' innovations, even if unfairly, can create an illusion of brilliance, efficiency, competence.
It's about perception management, even if it's built on shaky ground.
Exactly.
Now, this is really important. We need to circle back to those communication techniques we discussed earlier, because looking at them now through this lens of influence and strategy, they could be used differently, couldn't they?
Absolutely. Take you communication. Praising someone publicly. Seems nice, right?
Yeah, positive reinforcement.
But it could be a calculated move. Praising them in front of others might create social pressure, make them feel obligated, or try to live up to that image you've just created for them. Indirect influence.
So what looks like a compliment could be strategic positioning.
It could be. Or the broken record technique. We said it's useful for boundaries.
Right, for stopping repetitive, unproductive conversations.
But it could also just be used to shut people down, to dismiss legitimate points or concerns without actually engaging. Stonewalling, basically.
So the intent behind the repetition is key. Is it boundary setting or dismissal?
Exactly. And mirroring vocabulary and tone. We said it builds rapport.
Yeah, creates that feeling of closeness.
But if it's not genuine, if it's just a performance, then it's about creating a false sense of closeness, a way to quickly gain trust, lower someone's guard, maybe to exploit it later.
A manipulative tactic, essentially.
It can be, yes. And those little stories about your profession.
Making your job sound interesting.
Sure. But they could easily be embellished, couldn't they? Or even, well, partly fabricated to create a much more impressive image than reality.
Again, it comes down to intent. Is it to connect and illustrate or to mislead?
Precisely. And even something like staying informed on the news just to have conversation starters.
If there's no actual interest.
Then it's just a calculated social strategy, isn't it? Appearing engaged, but without any genuine connection to the topic or the conversation.
Wow. Okay, so pulling this all together as we wrap up, we've looked at how advanced communication is really about understanding how to make others feel seen, feel valued, how to engage them effectively, build that rapport.
Right. And we've also explored how understanding these psychological triggers, reciprocity, scarcity, liking, and so on, can definitely lead to greater influence.
But then there's also this other layer, the strategic, sometimes, let's be honest, less ethical behaviors that people might use specifically to gain influence or power.
And it's just crucial, isn't it, to recognize that these techniques, these insights, they're really just tools.
Tools that can be used for good or not so good.
Exactly. They can build positive connections, genuinely strengthen relationships, or they can be used for more self-serving, maybe even manipulative purposes. Understanding these dynamics, though, is valuable either way, for navigating your own interactions and for becoming more aware of the influences working on you.
That leads perfectly into our final thought for you, the listener. Think about the interactions you've had recently, maybe today, maybe this week. Which of these techniques have you noticed?
Either in your own behavior, perhaps unconsciously, or in how others have interacted with you.
And then consider, what might the implications be? Are these strategies fostering genuine connection, real understanding, or are they perhaps aimed more squarely at just achieving influence, getting a particular outcome?
It's definitely something worth reflecting on, the line between connection and influence and where these powerful techniques fall.